Good afternoon again, members and officers. I'm sure you'd wish to join me this afternoon in expressing condolences to Councillor Pavia, who's recently had a bereavement on the loss of his father. Thank you. Can we start with apologies for absence, please? Councillor Strong.
Councillors Lisa Dimmock and Matt Feekins, and Councillor Webb is going to be late.
Thank you. Councillor Howard. Thank you. Councillor Petroni.
Councillor Kevin Williams.
Councillor Watkins.
Linda Guppy sends her apologies.
Do we have any declarations of interest? As and when, thank you. We don't have any public questions. We haven't been notified of any public questions this afternoon, or of any petitions. So we'll move on to number 5, which is a statement from the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People regarding investment in 21st century schools. Councillor John.
Thank you very much. Last month saw the official opening of the award-winning Monmouth Comprehensive School, which perfectly showcased both the talents of the school's pupils, but also the benefits of an outstanding, modern, versatile and digitally rich learning environment. This, of course, followed the official opening of Caldecott School last year. Today, I want to update members on developments in the next stage of renewing our school estate, with particular reference to the funding options for Band B of the 21st Century Schools programme. In December last year, I brought forward a report to establish the small team that would work alongside members and senior officers to develop Band B. Our Band B proposal is the redevelopment of King Henry VIII Comprehensive and Derryview Primary Schools to provide a new learning campus for children aged 3 to 19 in Abergavenny. This redevelopment will allow for the transfer of Ysgol Gymraeg Ifenny from its current location to the site of Derryview, enabling it to expand to 2-form entry. The initial decision taken by Cabinet in 2017 concluded that the traditional capital financing route was the most appropriate way of funding that project. At that stage, we were looking at a 50% funding intervention rate. The Welsh Government has since changed its intervention rates for both the capital and revenue funding schemes. So the mutual investment model, the MIM, is the Welsh Government's revenue funding scheme. The Welsh Government intervention rates rate for traditionally financed schemes changed from 50 to 65%, while the rate for the MIM changed from 75 to 81%. And that gave us reason to undertake a fresh analysis of the potential advantages of the MIM, the mutual investment model. So over recent weeks, officers have been working with colleagues from Welsh Government and have recommended the most appropriate approach for Monmouthshire remains the traditional capital financing route. It affords the greatest flexibility whilst maintaining a lower overall cost profile for the local authority. Given the challenging budgetary pressures we face, particularly as the lowest funded local authority in the country, this flexibility was too significant a differential for us. While the MIM would have ensured that the new school is well maintained and returned to the authority in good condition at the end of the 25-year agreement, the MIM would also have restricted some of the specific design and innovative teaching requirements which we were able to achieve in both Caldecott and Monmouth. My statement today reaffirms the previously agreed political decision and allows us to proceed with speed, accuracy and clarity into Band B. Our 21st Century Schools Board visited the site on Monday as the work continues to identify the best location for the new school. I'm grateful for the involvement of the head teachers and chairs of governors of the 3 schools affected, whose expertise when it comes to the visioning of the new school will be critical to the entire success of this project. As we begin to develop the full business case for the new school, I will bring a report to full council in September proposing to make permanent the role of the 21st Century Schools Programme Manager and secure funding for the project team and feasibility studies, including site investigations and ground surveys. I also want to announce today a £1 million investment in our school estate as a consequence of a capital grant we received from Welsh Government at the very end of the 2018-19 financial year, for which we're grateful. This investment will include a new classroom at Gilwern Primary School and upgrades to specialist equipment in all 4 of our special needs resource bases. We've decided to invest £500,000 in Chepstow Comprehensive School to remodel the front pupil entrance, to install new windows, to decorate where necessary, to replace the ceiling, to install more energy efficient new lighting, and to remodel the reception area. Now, this is work that can proceed subject to the necessary planning consents. I hope this statement reaffirms our commitment to ensuring that every young person has the best possible start in life in Monmouthshire, and we remain committed to delivering a 21st century learning environment for every pupil.
Thank you, Councillor John. Councillor Howard, it's not usually questions at this point unless it's for clarity. All right, Councillor Howard, I'll allow it.
Okay, thank you, Jim. May I ask the Cabinet Member, with the 2 new schools, which is wonderful for the areas, have we any concerns with Interserve where they went into administration with bonds and monies being held? Have we any retentions which we're holding back from the said company for the receiver there? And how will we finance any problems that may arise with them 2 projects in the next forthcoming few years, which would have been guarantees, etc., we would have held with Interserve?
Right. I mean, my statement was specifically about Band B, but I can tell you that on where it concerns Band A and the 2 new schools we've delivered in Caldergot and Monmouth, that there are retentions, yes. And as far as the new school in Abergavenny is concerned, that will be is a completely separate project. So we haven't given any commitment as to who the contractors involved in Band B will be.
Thank you, Councillor John. We'll move on now to item 6, the Audit Committee Annual Report. We have with us today Mr. White, who chairs that committee. Welcome, Mr. White.
That is, isn't it? Yep. Okay. Well, there is a paper on the agenda, the Audit Committee Annual Report 2018-19. And as we set down under recommendations, on behalf of the Audit Committee, I submit this annual report for 2018-19 for consideration by the Council. I believe that it shows that over this period, the committee has fulfilled its role as defined in its terms of reference. The report will withstand detailed examination. While not wishing to go into all the detail in this presentation, some notable points are: the committee met 6 times in the year, attendance from the 10 councillors and the 1 co-opted member never fell below 8 attending, meetings were well supported by officers from the authority and the Wales Audit Office. Major contributors to the agendas, including the Wales Audit Office, included the Wales Audit Office, the authority's own internal audit service, the authority's finance officers, and the policy and performance manager. As well as the significant major recurrent issues, such as the annual statement of accounts and the subsequent external audit, internal audits, including plans for internal audits and outturn reports, contract procedure rules and exemptions, and the annual government statements, topics considered during the year also included strategic risk assessment, Treasury strategy, Treasury outturn reports, statements of reserves, whole authority complaints, comments and compliments, performance management. So again, I'll quote from the recommendations in the paper. The report shows that the workings of the committee continue to be both valuable and productive, and that it provides assurance to the Council regarding the committee's activities in the effective governance of financial affairs and other matters by the authority. So in support of that statement, I submit this report to the Council.
Thank you very much, Mr White. Councillor Higson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to second Mr White's report.
Everybody in favour of accepting the report? Thank you. Councillor Howard? Or you just... Right. Can we have a vote, please, then, on accepting the report? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr White, for coming along and for all your continued hard work in presenting the report and throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 7, Statement of Accounts. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And the purpose of this report is to volunteer a pilot change in the approval process for a statement of accounts, recognising earlier publication deadlines are not conducive with existing meeting cycles. It's caused us quite a problem because the rules have changed with regards to the Audit Wales Amendment Regulations 2018, and it's caused us some diary problems. Also, relatedly, to provide a copy of the draft statement of accounts for the authority for 18-19 for member consideration during the audit process, and Mark Holdcroft's here to answer any questions that might relate to that. So the recommendation is that the draft MCC statement of accounts for that year is presented for audit, and that's in Appendix 2 for those who want to raise any questions on it. And that for 2018-19 statement of accounts process, that the final approval of the audited statement of accounts is delegated to the audit committee rather than requiring approval by full council. So as I said earlier, the regulations have changed and are designed to bring forward the publication of the 2021 local authority accounts and thereafter by 2 months. Now that causes quite a problem because it would necessitate publication of the statements of accounts by the 15th of September. Now traditionally the publication of accounts is accommodated within the usual September cycle of scrutiny meetings. And the current meeting dates are the 12th of September and the 19th of September, making it impossible therefore to properly scrutinise those accounts in time for the publication by the 15th of September. So having given consideration to that situation, to the logistics of presenting the audit accounts to both audit committee and council prior to the 15th of September, given the shorter time period available, it is proposed that on a piloted 1-year basis, that council trials the approach already utilised by some other Welsh authorities, whereby the approval of the audited accounts is delegated to the audit committee rather than requiring approval by full council. Now, as I said earlier, Mark is here to answer any questions that relate to the accounts that are in Appendix 2. And I take this opportunity of thanking Mark and his team for getting the accounts out in draft form so quickly this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. We have 2 recommendations to look at. So if we take the first one, item 2.1, do you have a seconder for that recommendation?
Second.
Do we have any other comments or observations? Councillor Petroni.
Yes, I'd like to ask Councillor Murphy, when was the last time Monmouthshire school balances lost £400,000 in 1 year?
Off the top of my head, Chair, I don't know, but I'm quite certain that we can dig that information out for Councillor Petroni. It was a long time ago.
Thank you. Councillor Eason.
Next week in audit, but going to the school's balances, I can't get my maths right. You're showing overall the schools, about 15 schools in the deficit budget position, with a £241,000 900 surplus. Yet further on down, you show a total of £232,000 in a negative balance. Could you explain how you get from 241 with Mountain House and the PRU to get to a 232 deficit in actual terms? I don't understand that.
Mr. Howcroft, would you like to take that question?
I'm not sure whether I'm on or not. Yes. Okay.
Page 94.
If I have a look at that while you're having your meeting, because clearly the arrangements for the statement of accounts is slightly different than the management information that members receive all through the year. Those amounts should effectively be the same, but there are reasons why the statement of accounts reports things slightly differently. So, for instance, members may appreciate that the outturn report that they would have seen last year had a £49,000 surplus. When you present the statement of accounts, you include all things like depreciation, etc., which would be that management information, and therefore the figures in the statement of accounts would be a figure that members wouldn't be that familiar with. If I just have a look at that while your meeting proceeds, and if I can answer it before the end of the meeting, I will do. If not, I'll give you a full response by next week's audit committee, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Right. We'll go to a vote then on the recommendation to that the accounts have been reviewed by this full council.
Yeah, I was just saying the microphone didn't seem to be
that's-
working
that's better.
from what the officer said, so we didn't catch what the response was. Thank you.
Would you like him to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Sorry, Mr. Howcroft. Use a different microphone.
I was simply explaining that the statement of accounts is a very technical document that's different from the management information that members would be familiar with through the year. There are things added into the statement of accounts, that things like depreciation, that wouldn't be part of the normal regular accounts. I can't immediately account for that difference. I will have a look at page 95 while your meeting continues. And if I can answer it for the benefit of all concerned before the end of the meeting, I will do. If not, I'll bring it back to audit committee next week when they consider it.
Chief Executive's going to answer that as well.
Just to speed it up, I think I can help because I've had the chance to look when Mark was answering your question. There are three subtotals in that table. If you aggregate the three subtotals, you come to the bottom line. So you have a figure of 635,473 in brackets. Yeah? Yes. Well, I'm on page 93. You have a subtotal for your secondary schools. You have a subtotal for primary schools, and you have a subtotal for Mountain House and the pupil referral unit. If you take those three numbers together, you aggregate them, you get the bottom line. Okay? So I think, Mark, that deals with it.
Thank you.
Councillor Howarth.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just be clear then? So we're going to vote on now the statement of accounts will be passed over to the audit committee to sign off.
No, we're dealing with the first
And
part of the
they will-
recommendation.
Yes, but they will not be coming back to full council anymore. Is that correct? Okay, I just need to be clear on that. Is there anything within the Constitution that says it has to come back to full council? I just want to be clear on that one as well, because we do make decisions sometimes and we have to revert back to them.
If you're content as council to approve the recommendations, they're not in conflict with your constitution.
And to give you a comfort, there are other authorities that have used this as a mechanism to facilitate the shorter timescales around closure. We're only advocating this being a one-year pilot, so it isn't a precedent for any future years. Next year would revert back to the older ways of working, unless members' feedback was such that they found this particularly conducive to them.
Councillor Fox.
Yes, I haven't got any problems with the recommendation. It's a pilot, as you say, and but there's still the accounts are presented for us today to comment on and pick up any points we wish, which can be taken forward and considered by the audit committee. I'll look forward to seeing what how this works in practice, and then we'll consider it again, I'm sure, this time next year. But I haven't got a problem with this moving this forward as suggested, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to emphasise the fact that this change has been necessitated by the fact that the diary had already been published, and it's very difficult to fit all of the meetings around. So if this works, then great. We'll look to extend it. If for any reason we've got a problem with it, it won't matter because the diaries can be made to fit with it next time. So really it's just to get over that problem of how do we give it the correct amount of scrutiny before the actual deadline for issuing the accounts.
Thank you. We've discussed both recommendation 2.1 and 2.2 now. So should we vote on the two recommendations together? Okay. So all those in favour? So that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we're now on item number 8, members' questions. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Question for Councillor John Lasper on the agenda.
Thank you very much. For clarification, there are 4 main PLASC categories of special educational need: cognition and learning, communication and interaction difficulties, behaviour, emotional and social difficulties, sensory and physical difficulties. Each of these categories is broken down into a number of subcategories which describes in more detail the child's special educational need. For example, the category cognition and learning has 8 different subcategories, which include specific learning difficulties, dyslexia, moderate learning difficulties, and profound and multiple difficulties. The Additional Learning Needs Statutory Team provides regular information on the numbers of children and young people with statements of special educational need across Monmouthshire. This information is analysed by special educational need category, by national curriculum year group, and also by gender. There are regular discussions about any aspects of the data that would be a cause for concern. Councillor Harris has asked for specific information about primary pupils with additional learning needs in the north of the county. So, based on that definition, I've taken the north of the county to mean pupils attending Cantrev, Crossash, Derryview, Goitre, Gilwern, Kiminview, Landogo, Llanfoist, Lantylia Patholi, Lambie Hangle, Criccorney, Osbaston, Our Lady in St Michael's Roman Catholic, Overmono, Raglan, Usk, and Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni schools. So I've got the following figures. Dyslexia, 49. Dyspraxia, 3. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, 5. General learning difficulties, 193. Moderate learning difficulties, 75. Severe learning difficulties, 11. Profound and multiple learning difficulties, 6. In the communication and interaction difficulties category, speech, language and communication difficulties, 146. Autistic spectrum disorders, now this includes Asperger's syndrome and social communication difficulties, 39. Behaviour, emotional and social difficulties, 108. Hearing impairment, 50. Visual impairment, 8. Multisensory impairment, so those are pupils with a combination of visual and hearing impairment, 3. Physical and medical difficulties, 40. The Principal Officer for Additional Learning Needs and the Statutory ALN Officer have met with all primary schools to discuss their ALN population and have addressed directly with each school any areas of concern. Further work and training is planned in the autumn term, which will support schools more effectively to meet the needs of their additional learning needs pupils. This includes the identification of effective specialist interventions and a training programme specifically for teaching assistants. The number of children diagnosed with autistic spectrum disorder is growing, so the ALN and educational psychology services have prioritised this as an area where more targeted training and support is required. And from September 2020, the local authority will be required to implement the statutory requirements outlined in the ALN and Educational Tribunal Act 2018. Now that includes a number of changes, including the move to individual development plans as opposed to statements of special educational needs. And that will present both the local authority and schools significant challenges as we move forward.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Councillor John. That really is very detailed. And I obviously didn't quite make it plain that I wanted the differences in each school, but that doesn't really matter because we can work that one out. So my supplementary is going on that. I knew there'd be an awful lot of figures, but should any detailed analysis of the statistics provided reveal a large variation in individual schools' identified ALN needs, would it be appropriate to consider that professional support for such pupils be distributed on a proportional basis, such that schools hosting high numbers of ALN problems receive a weighted proportion of expert support? And if Councillor John agrees with this suggestion, the suggestion is appropriate, when can an outcome be expected? Or if he considers that the current allocations are adequate, please will he explain his reasoning? Now, I don't know if I've totally confused you there, but basically, as far as I'm aware, all schools receive the same amount of support from, for example, the Education and Psychology Department. Some schools might not have any problems and others may have huge amounts of problems, and basically, any thoughts on evening that out?
So obviously the demand will vary from school to school, but obviously we've got our 4 special needs resource bases, which are particularly specialised in terms of what they can offer to our pupils. In terms of the data and the differences from school to school, that's data we can obtain for you, so you can get more of a breakdown. And I'd certainly be happy to discuss that data with you and what that means for ALN pupils, and if there are views on how we could do that more effectively, I'm more than happy to meet up with you and discuss them.
Thank you. We'll move on to a question from County Councillor Louise Brown now.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My question is as written at 8.2 to County Councillor John, Cabinet Member. Thank you.
Right. Firstly, can I thank Councillor Brown for her questions? And I recognise that Mountain House Special School is in Louise's ward, and she's engaged particularly diligently with the consultation, and has submitted a very thorough and detailed response to the consultation. So thank you for that. As your question states, we had been due to make a decision on the future of Mountain House Special School at Cabinet on the 5th of June. I set out at that meeting that when the formal consultation period had ended on the 29th of April, we had not received a number of consultation responses from what we considered to be key stakeholders, including a number of both neighbouring and placing local authorities. So I also received a request from the Leader of the Opposition to make a late submission, and we felt that we should allow time for these additional responses so we could make a much more informed decision. The statutory process concerning the proposed closure of a school is one that's set out in the Welsh School Organisation Code. So we must set out how we propose to proceed within 26 weeks of the closure of the consultation. So in this case, it gives us a deadline of the 28th of October 2019. I asked officers to change the timetable to ensure that responses from key partners could be taken into account. As we're within a statutory process, we have not extended the consultation period, nor have we initiated a new one. I've simply stated that we will continue to accept late submissions from these key partners, and these will be able to be considered by both officers and members and will appear in the formal report, although they will be marked as late receipt. So at the Cabinet meeting on the 5th of June, I explained why we decided to delay the decision. I explained that I did not feel it would be fair to make a decision during the summer months while staff and pupils were away. So I stated that we would consider the matter at a Cabinet meeting in mid-September. This date has been confirmed for Wednesday the 18th of September at 2 o'clock. This allows time for reports to be published during term time, and I envisage those reports, that report to go into the public domain on the 10th of September, and key consultees are being informed of the new decision date.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Brown?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My supplementary question is really about the consultation report date, because the previous consultation did have a date when the summary report will be available, and you know, I'm pleased that a date has been set for the next one. Unfortunately, the Cabinet wasn't available on webcast, so I wasn't aware of what statements had been made, and I think there's been a couple of misses of those Cabinet meetings on occasion, so if you're not at the meeting you can't actually listen to it. So obviously I wasn't aware of that, but I'm glad that the question has actually prompted you know, a date to be set, you know, and I think it's helpful for those concerned because of term ending soon that the school knows when the next date will be. But also, could you tell me what the consultation report summary date will be? Thank you.
Yeah, so certainly all our Cabinet meetings should be available on YouTube for anyone to watch. So if there are some that have been missed, that's certainly something we can follow up. It has also been reported in local media that the decision wasn't taken on the 5th of June and that we would be making that decision now in mid-September. So I would envisage the report going into the public domain on the 10th of September in advance of a decision being made at Cabinet on the 18th of September.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question, which is also from Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Question has written at 8.3 of the agenda. Thank you.
So a consultation report will be published, as I say, on the 10th of September. It will summarise the responses received to the consultation, including those that have been received after the deadline of the 29th of April. But in line with previous consultations, a copy of the full responses received will be made available to members in the library area here in County Hall.
Councillor Brown.
Can I just, as a supplementary, presumably that the full responses will be available on the same date of the 10th of September, is that right? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor John. So we'll move on to the next question, which is from County Councillor Joe Watkins.
Thank you. Could the Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services please give an update to the Council on what the Council is doing relating to climate change?
Thank you very much, Councillor Watkins, for your question. Following the motion in May, I instructed officers to begin work on developing an action plan which will set out how we aim to reduce the authority's carbon emissions. With the Chair's agreement, I hope to take this to strong communities in September and bring it to Council in October so that all members have a chance to debate and endorse the actions that will deliver this policy commitment. If we are to reduce our emissions, we first need to understand what they are now. Emissions for the whole county have dropped from around 900,000 tonnes per year in 2005 to around 650,000 tonnes per year in 2016. This is consistent with national trends as more renewable energy is generated and the use of coal reduces. Even so, at that rate, it would take more than 30 years to achieve the sort of change we need. 51% of these emissions are from transport, which reflects the rural nature of the county, 24% from domestic emissions and 25% from industrial and commercial emissions. Looking more specifically at our own organisation, we emit around 8,700 tonnes of carbon a year from static assets such as buildings and street lighting, and another 3,000 tonnes from vehicles racked up by officers and members in the course of their work. We know that significant emissions are as a result of procurement. The carbon produced in the manufacture of the supplies we buy that are made elsewhere. Indeed, Natural Resources Wales found that around 60% of their carbon footprint came from the things they bought. Our own estimates made using a DEFRA formulae has given us an estimate of around 15,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide emitted from procured goods and services per year, although I have to stress this is a crude estimate. So what are we doing about this? On the 19th of June, around 30 officers held a half-day workshop to begin thinking about how we need to respond to the climate emergency. First of all, they considered the positive work towards reducing our emissions that are already underway, such as our solar farm, installing electrical vehicle charging points, installing LED street lighting, and the many other schemes that members heard about at the excellent seminar on climate change in April. Officers then began identifying a wide range of actions drawn from best practice, looking at transport, energy, waste and procurement, land use and green infrastructure. Consideration was given to what the carbon impact of different actions would be, estimates of the financial cost and timescales. From this, officers began to categorise actions in terms of high to low impact and ease of implementation in order to begin to prioritise what needs to be done first. 4 separate workshops have been held this week looking at these themes. In fact, the Transport Group is meeting as we speak to continue the process of prioritising which actions will form part of our action plan, which will then need to be worked up into more detailed proposals. We hugely value the enthusiasm, energy and expertise of the residents of Monmouthshire who have such a lot to contribute to working with us to tackle the climate emergency. We cannot reduce county-wide carbon emissions on our own, and so in line with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, we plan to collaborate with our communities and other partners to work together on our action plan. We have set a date for the next Community Climate Champions meeting on Wednesday, the 31st of July, to begin this process. We have also begun to amend other policies in light of the climate emergency. For example, a new Issues, Vision and Objectives paper for the LDP has been approved, which reflects and specifically references the climate emergency. In addition, the corporate plan objectives will be subject to a mid-term review and will incorporate more detail on the climate emergency. I would like to sincerely thank all officers for their commitment to the climate change emergency, despite all the other pressures that they have. This council has not taken the declaration of a climate emergency lightly, and rest assured that I will make sure that the commitment and urgency needed to tackle this important issue is sustained in the weeks, months and years ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Watkins?
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Pratt, for a statement. And I'd also like to thank officers as well for taking the time and energy and really putting this climate emergency at the top of their agenda as well, and the work that I know has been going on in the council about that. So thank you for that. So my supplementary question to the Cabinet member is, I was always really proud of Monmouthshire for the fact that we invested in a solar farm. It made me actually really, really proud before I even joined this council as a councillor that we had put in our own money into something which was a renewable scheme. As a council, are we also looking to invest? We have an investment committee which is set up to generate things. Are we actually going to look at more investment in things such as renewable energy, which we will then be putting our money where our mouth is as well? So could the Cabinet member give any indications about that?
Thank you very much for that supplementary question. Sorry, thank you very much for that. You might be pleased to know that 99% of our county buildings do actually use renewable energy. So we're already doing that. So that really is something that's been happening for a while. As far as the solar farm, I know that we are looking at an additional solar farm. So that is certainly on the agenda. And part of this process that's taking place over the summer will include looking at what investments can be made. That will be part of it. So that is a very valid question, and I hope I've answered it. We'll have more meat on the bones in the autumn, when the obviously fully costed plan is taken to Stronger Communities. And I would encourage all members to attend that Stronger Communities Select Committee. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of June. All in favour? All in favour? And to note the date of the next meeting as Thursday, the 19th of September. And I don't know if that's one for the history books. Lots of nods. Thank you all very much.